Hey everybody, welcome back to DRTV, Above the Pay Grade. Again, I'm Jay Friesen with
Brian Mattson.
And on Above the Pay Grade, we have somebody who is far more qualified in legal matters than we are.
Or any matter, for that matter.
Yeah, that's a lot of matters. She is an attorney, and she lives in D.C., so that by itself is
above our pay grade.
We're joined by Kerri Kupec with Alliance Defending Freedom, Legal Communications Director for them. Kerri, how are you today?
Doing great. Doing great.
Fantastic. Haven't seen you since the radio show. If you haven't heard the radio show, listen to the radio show.
That was right after the Obergefell decision. We did a podcast called SCOTUS Focus, and Kerri was
episode
our guest.
3.
Yeah.
Dead Reckoning Radio, episode 3.
And but that was all audio, and voila! Through the magic of digital media, we now give you Kerri in the flesh.
It's good to be with you guys.
Great to have you. So, you've been busy. There's a lot going on Capitol Hill, and you and the Alliance Defending Freedom have been involved, as I understand it, in a series of committee meetings.
Judiciary.
Is it the House Judiciary Committee?
That's right.
Okay, and you guys, these committee hearings are about what?
Planned Parenthood. It's the hot topic these days, especially in D.C. And so there's a series of congressional hearings that have been taking place, the first of which was last week. And like you said, it was the House Judiciary Committee. And the impetus for these hearings were obviously those videos that have continued to be released by Center for Medical Progress that sort of just bring to the surface what we already knew, right? Planned Parenthood has a long rap sheet, and these videos essentially just put it in front of everyone's face. And so this is the motivation for these hearings. That was it was a big part of the discussion last week. It lasted almost 4 hours, which was a very long time. And then we have another one coming up on Thursday that's actually the Health Subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee. So.
Wow. So these videos, as you say, these videos sort of put Planned Parenthood and what they do in front of everyone's face. Unfortunately, Kerri, it's not in front of everybody's face. It's amazing how many people have not watched these videos. As I understand it, even congressmen on the House Judiciary Committee have not watched the videos. So tell us, describe for our viewers who maybe haven't watched them, and some people don't watch them just because they can't handle it. You know, these are pretty nauseating. But describe for us what these videos show Planned Parenthood engaged in.
The biggest thing they show are the top-level executives, you know, kind of casually eating salads and sipping on wines and having these dinner conversations while they talk about crushing and crunching babies in such a way as to preserve their livers, their hearts, their brains. They talk about altering abortion procedures in order to get these body parts for resale and research. They talk about the fact, like the video came out, there was a video, the 10th video was released this morning, and you had an executive saying this could be essentially a PR nightmare if this got out. So they're cognizant of what they're doing. And so they've shown a lot of really kind of gruesome practices. And I think the thing that stuck out the most, which Cecile Richards even sort of alluded to in that interesting first statement she made, that the tone, the callous nature. You know, this is an organization that markets itself to women as providing health care when it's very evident that they have an incredibly calloused disregard for human life. And that's been most disturbing, I think.
So, Kerri, the videos have all been coming out, and you're sitting at these meetings, and what we would like, and I'm not going to be shy about this, is we want to defund Planned Parenthood from getting all of that government money.
Yeah, and they get how much taxpayer money, Kerri?
They get about $128 million per year, and they have something like $4 billion in assets over the last decade. This is an abortion industry, and they make a killing, you know, literally and figuratively off these practices.
Wow. Only like 665, I think, clinics around the United States as well as the number.
Yeah, that's right. So it's really interesting. So in this effort to defund, it should be, I should say, a nonpartisan issue. And as Representative Trent Frank said at the hearing last week, this is, again, not a partisan issue, but it's who we are as a human family. And there's a common sense win-win solution, and that's to take this money that's being, funneled to Planned Parenthood and redirect it to these federally qualified health clinics, these public health community centers, essentially, that actually provide comprehensive health care to women. So I could even rattle off some of the services they provide, but they provide the same things that Planned Parenthood purports to, but then they actually can treat these things. Because a lot of things that Planned Parenthood does is they can say, oh, we think you have this, and they refer you somewhere else. Well, these clinics are starving for the money, and they can actually diagnose and treat.
So what's your sense as you're sitting in these hearings, and these are about to defund, about defunding Planned Parenthood. What is your sense? What kind of vibe are you picking up?
Well, last week, as you can imagine, emotions ran high. It was the first one, so there was a lot of talk about abortion. You had 2 women testifying before the committee who were actually abortion survivors. And one of the women, Gianna Jessen, she made a very poignant statement and said, if abortion is about women's rights, where were mine?
Right.
And she showed pictures of the kind of abortion that her birth mother had engaged in, that burns part of the baby, and then if the baby is born alive, they lead them to die in a bucket of formaldehyde in a closet. And so you had these kinds of testimonies presented. You had members on both sides really just sort of riled up. You had, as you said, Brian, a Democrat member, Representative Hank Johnson, who said, I haven't watched one video, even though the videos were the basis for this hearing in the first place. That just, as an attorney, that really stuck out to me, because I'm thinking, if this was a court of law and an attorney on the, let's say the first day of trial came and said, oh, I haven't looked at any of the evidence.
Right.
I mean, that's, it's stunning. I don't understand. Where's the due diligence? It's ridiculous. It's pathetic is what it is. And so the sense is, I think these hearings are going to continue. You're seeing a lot in the states, individual states' efforts to defund. You have state attorney generals calling for this defunding. But then you had on Miss America, I don't know if you guys caught Miss America on Sunday night.
Oh, yeah, I tune into the Miss America pageant every year. I don't miss it, No, I'm just kidding. Tell us what happened, Kerri.
So it was really frustrating, right? We're pushing out all this information. Alliance Defending Freedom, we've created all these maps that to speak to Jay's earlier point, there's literally 20 of these public health centers for every single Planned Parenthood facility. These clinics that actually treat health, issues. But anyway, after all, one of the contestants in Miss America was asked about Planned Parenthood and defunding and all that. And she rattled off why Planned Parenthood is a great, service to women, and then said, and they do mammograms.
Right.
If there is one myth that gets me more riled up, is this idea they market themselves as being able to do mammograms when, in fact, they are not licensed to do mammograms whatsoever. And so Planned Parenthood they continuously market themselves as this organization that cares about women and the sex abuse stuff, as you guys about
Sure.
that, the report we released on that front, not reporting sex abuse of minor girls. It's ridiculous.
And the incredible conflict of interest that you're caring for these pregnant women when you have one outcome in mind, the outcome being the one that makes you money, and the one that makes you money is abortion. And now, as we know, post-abortion selling of the fetal parts. That is how they make their money. So, I mean, in what sense can we say this is an organization dedicated to choice? What is the likelihood that real choice is being offered when, 96% of all women who go to Planned Parenthood get abortions, right? Isn't that the number?
Right. It's something like, so 94% of women who go into Planned Parenthood facilities who are seeking out pregnancy treatment end up engaging in some kind of abortion service of some kind. And what's interesting is like you said, it's an incredible moneymaker. I don't think these women know that they're really being exploited, that Planned Parenthood sees them as a dollar sign, because they go in, for instance, I didn't even know this until I sort of became engaged in this whole issue. I was under the impression that women went into Planned Parenthood facilities and could get an abortion either at no cost or very, very low cost. Not at all. They're charged several $100s per abortion. So think about it. So Planned Parenthood is making several $100s per abortion. On top of that, they're getting subsidized millions of American taxpayer dollars every year. And then on top of that, they are using the baby, body parts for resale and research. This is an unbelievable money-making scheme.
It's all on an industrial scale that I don't think hardly any of us can really fathom. That's the amazing thing. They've industrialized this.
They really have. They really have. And what's interesting is that the other side will say, well, if Planned Parenthood is defunded, where are women going to go? Well, for starters, like we keep talking about, they can go to these public health community centers. But the reality is Planned Parenthood is not going anywhere. They can still go there. They're not just because Planned Parenthood stops receiving taxpayer dollars doesn't mean they're shutting down.
No, they're worth too much money. They're worth too much money for that, right?
Yeah, no. Like I said, $4 billion in assets. That's a lot of money for a nonprofit organization.
Yeah. Somebody told me on Twitter recently, though, that Planned Parenthood doesn't make any money. They're a nonprofit.
Right. Right.
Ouch. So Kerri, what's the likelihood Planned Parenthood will be defunded? What's the legal mechanism for this to take place, and what is the likelihood of it actually happening? What do you think?
So there are two different ways it could happen. It can happen on the federal level, or it could happen in the state level. So I think that groups who are, advocating for this money to be redirected toward these public health community centers are approaching it from both angles. And the biggest way to defund Planned Parenthood is to cut the Medicaid funding. Because you have people like Chris Christie going on record and saying, look, I defunded in my state, New Jersey, years ago. And the reality is there are different ways to defund, but the big one is Medicaid, and because that's where Planned Parenthood is getting most of their federal tax dollars. So what's happening is you have certain presidential candidates who are claiming to have defunded when in fact it's this very minor way of doing it, when the big gun is really the Medicaid issue. So you're seeing it on both fronts. There's a possibility of Congress putting together a CR at the end of September, or a standalone resolution where they would defund. There's also talk that it's going to happen later, maybe in December. And then, like I said, you're going to see it, I think, on a number of state fronts. It's already happening in the states. So
if you can do it like on a state level, is there something that we can do? What is it we can do as we sit in our Floridas and Colorados and Montanas?
Sure. What can people do?
I think one of the best ways to go about doing that is to contact your representatives and just let them know that, look, there's a common sense win-win solution, redirect these funds to these public health clinics, and these women are still going to get the health care they need. So I think that's the best grassroots way of doing that. And also maybe taking a look at some of the businesses and corporations, and tweeting and emailing them and saying, hey, look, have you considered doing this? And it may sound sort of small scale, but the reality is, at least with contacting representatives, I've been shocked to learn here in DC that a phone ringing off the hook in a representative's office makes a big difference, a lot more than I would have even thought. So it's very important that people just make that calls even more than emails in some cases.
Yeah, and I would just encourage our viewers, I've been calling my representative and senators a number of times over this issue.
I think they're getting tired of hearing from us.
But believe it or not, people actually answer the phone. If you call Washington, D.C., and you call their office, a human being will generally pick up the phone, and you can really talk to a real human being. It gives a sense, and I'm glad that that's still the case in our country. It gives the sense that this is a representative government, that there is somebody on the other end of the line. So it does make a difference to call. Kerri, a political question for you.
Sure.
Is the plan to defund Planned Parenthood, does this get wrapped up into the broader issue of continuing to fund the entire government? In other words, is this going to come down to a question of whether the federal government shuts down or not, whether Planned Parenthood gets funded or not? And if so, what does that look like politically for the various sides, do you think?
I really think a lot of that question is in how it's framed. I've thought a lot about this, and actually Senator Rubio said it best a while ago. The question should be posed to Democrats and other candidates, to the Democrats especially, saying, are you willing to shut down the government in order to keep funding Planned Parenthood, when we now know the kind of callous disregard that they show towards human life, regardless of, there's a lot of controversy. Oh, are they selling it? Are they making profit? Are they not? It's sort of irrelevant. I think anybody who watches the videos, it's not rocket science. You see what you're dealing with when you even spend 5 minutes watching these things. But I think that's really how this question needs to be framed. And I think presidential candidates need to go on the offensive with this and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. You guys are the ones who are forcing our hand on this. You're the ones who are willing to shut down the government because you are so determined to keep funding this organization. Why? Because they put so much money in your campaign coffers. And that's really what this is about.
That is the reality, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I love that approach. When Senator Rubio said that, I was like jumping out of my chair and cheering.
Me too.
I just wonder how plausible it is to get that perspective heard when pretty much the majority of the news outlets and media outlets in this country that are disseminating news to the American people would never frame it that way. They have an agenda to frame it the other way.
Well, they have an agenda not to frame it at all.
Well, I'm just wondering, it's just, once again, it seems like our side is always at a media disadvantage. And of course, you're the communications director. How do we overcome this?
I think a first step would be, one of the 35 candidates running for the GOP nomination is that.
I don't think it's quite that many.
Is that
Feels that way.
One of the first ways to combat that is every time they are asked that question, they immediately have to say, well, actually, what you're really saying is this. And I think if you actually had all of them in lockstep, right, because the left is so very, very good at being uniform in their messaging and the way they frame things. They don't falter. And our side, I don't know what it is. We just can't ever seem to be uniform in the way that we create, talking points and messaging. And so anyway, I think the first step would be to automatically reframe the question. And if you have enough of those candidates doing that, that's going to get soundbited after a while. You're going to have enough because they're going to get tired of it. They're going to say it over and over again.
And I do think that if you turn it around and you go on offense like that as a candidate, they're going to stop asking you the question.
Well, that's the other thing, exactly.
Yeah. So that's a political victory in and of itself. They're asking the question to embarrass you, right? I mean, that's the whole motive. And when you turn it around and embarrass them, the question stops getting asked. So it's amazing. It's just a multifaceted issue. You've got hearings in Congress. You've got the communications, the media battle, the calling your representatives. Look, folks, this is all hands on deck. Everybody needs to do their part. Everybody, and whatever your part is, whether it's just calling your representative, do it. If it's supporting the Alliance Defending Freedom and you can do that, do it. So, Kerri, where can people find out more about your organization and what you're about?
They can go to adflegal.org and they can click on Planned Parenthood, the whole story.
Great. adflegal.org, Planned Parenthood, the whole story. And to follow Dead Reckoning, www.deadreckoning.tv. We'll put up a link in the show notes for all of the phone numbers and the contact information on how to get in touch with your representative so you can call both the state and federal level and get Planned Parenthood defunded. Kerri, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Guys, you guys are the best. Thanks for having me on.
All right, you bet. Sweet.
Thanks for joining us on DRTV. I'm Jay Friesen.
I'm Brian Mattson.
We'll see you next week.